I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Several of you guys requested at our YouTube channel that we review the album In Conflict by Owen Pallett. So, Tom, we've reviewed an Owen Pallett album before under a different moniker.
Yep, Final Fantasy's Heap Whose Clouds.
That was a request.
Yes,
interesting album title. In Conflict,
much
more of a, didn't scare the crap out of me before I listened to it album title. But what was the general sound that you heard on In Conflict, and how did it compare to Heap Whose Clouds? And just what are we dealing with here with Owen Pallett?
Well, it's interesting. Owen Pallett is really well known for his string arrangements. He's worked with several notable artists, kind of behind the scenes, doing string arrangements. We were just looking up, God, some of the artists that he's worked with. Arcade Fire, The National, which is two of our favorites that we've reviewed several albums from.
Up.
Yeah, Fucked Up. Lots of artists. On this album, he actually brought Brian Eno in to do some help with other arrangements, kind of driving some of the vocals, some of the synths, because this is a bit more of an electronic direction, and while it still has that kind of orchestral, and I would even say theatrical or even operatic kind of flair to it, it's a little tighter, it's a little more electronic.
Right, it absolutely is. In fact, most of these songs have, those are the two components that I was hearing in every single song. There was usually a dominant electronic melody, and then lots of swelling string arrangements would come in at least some point in the time. Either the track was around it or it used string arrangements to kind of build dynamically. Now, one thing that, excuse me, that I heard throughout this record is that Owen Pallett's vocals. I mean, just what a strong vocal presence he has. He has a very nice, clean-sounding voice. And he uses it to create a lot of really nice vocal parts that are interesting and keep the songs moving. Now, I would also say that I really he doesn't use a lot of just normal chord progressions. You know, it's very, there's a sense of complexity that you get when you listen to Owen Pallett's music, that this guy is kind of a musical genius. You know, he kind of has this vibe, Tom, just when I started this adventure in Pallett Town, and I went in and started, thinking about how he wrote this record, it kind of comes off like he was in his mom's basement, just jamming out, just like recording his violin. The guy kind of has a creepy vibe. If you've seen a picture to him, some of the picture of him and some of the lyrics to his songs have like a creepy vibe. But the thing is that it kind of just behooves you to wonder if this guy is just a musical genius. He has great chord progressions, writes in interesting time signatures, rhythms. Rhythms. These songs don't follow any set pattern. There's rarely a cohesive structure song to song. These songs just kind of flow and bloom as you listen to them, and that's always an interesting listening experience whenever you dive into an album, to realize that you have so many ideas present. It's all about whether or not the artist capitalizes on those ideas.
Exactly, and from there I feel like he does a good job for sure, but could have done better in some areas for my taste. And really what that comes down to is that this was an album that sounded fairly homogenized to me. You have the same kind of sound palette, pun intended, let's face it. It's just right there. It's staring me in the face, I have to say it. But anyway, while I certainly agree that there is, not really much in terms of like boring, formulaic pop structure, there's still, in the sound and that dimension of it, not a whole lot changes from song to song. Now it does a little bit. Some songs are a little more beat focused, some songs are a little more string focused, but those elements are all there. And particularly, I feel like dynamically it never really reaches a peak. If you watch this show much before, you'll know that I am a guy who really likes when albums just burst at some point. It doesn't have to be all the time, but at least have that kind of climax. I feel like this album gets as close to that as it's going to on track 10, The Riverbed.
Yes, which is both of our track picks.
Oh yeah, it's a clear highlight.
In fact, it's the only track that we both picked, and it's for that reason. You and I both look for dynamic contrast, and it's the only song that truly provides a strong sense of dynamic contrast. Starts quiet, builds throughout, lots of strings swell in, and it's just kind of an overwhelming experience.
Driving beat. Right. But still, I feel like it maybe only gets to like a 7 on the intensity scale. And I feel like Owen Pallett, with some of the topics he's singing about, which tend to get kind of heavy, even given the light arrangements and production, which is kind of a cool contrast, I would say, an interesting juxtaposition. But still, I want it to get to this point of just like despair and heartache and just him, you know, desperation. And I don't feel like it ever quite gets there. The dam never truly breaks, and I really wish that it would. So that's one thing that's holding it back for me a little bit. But still, overall, I mean, you can't deny this guy's compositional skills.
Yes.
You can't deny the sharp production on the album, and just the fact that when I come out of this album, I feel like I listen to something interesting and something that sticks out amongst a lot of the music that's coming out today.
It's totally an original sound.
Yeah.
In fact, the production is great. A lot of the, you know, synth or electronic melodies that you hear Brian, you know, at the helm there, like they're very memorable. And you know, I can think of like the title track, In Conflict, which actually you liked as a track pick.
Yeah.
That was one of my least favorite tracks on the album. I just didn't like how some of the production meshed together, but it was still well done. I could tell that every single thing in that track and on all these tracks was very specific and there for a reason, and that's something that we definitely look for. It just didn't, you're right, it didn't have that burst that it really, and it's almost like he just played it safe, especially while the vocals are masterfully written and performed, they aren't, you know, as dynamic as they could be. It doesn't have that intensity that it really needs to convey that emotion.
I totally agree. It felt a little too even for me, but still, it's a great effort.
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend it.
And I really liked how that record ends. There's, you know, in between part 1 and part 2, these string and horn transitionals. There's 3 tracks there that I think are just really good tracks. Mostly, to be honest, because I think that the lyrics are stronger on those tracks than on other tracks on this record. And I think that that's one key to In Conflict that you have to kind of get into is the lyrics if you're really going to love this record. However, lyrics mean a little bit to me, but they're not the most important thing. In fact, I have listened to many records without any vocals or the lyrics are in another language, and still love those records.
Yeah.
They just don't mean a lot to me, so that doesn't really raise my score that much. I'm going to go 78 on this one.
I'm going 77.
Okay, so I'm a little higher than you, but still, this is right on the cusp of like the bulk of the albums that we review. But that means that it's probably pretty good since we pre-screen a lot of the records that come out and released every week. We give this a 78 overall. What do you guys give it? Did you like In Conflict more or less than us? Tell us why and start a conversation. We'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions at www.velocitiesinmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesinmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and let Tom and I know which records you'd like to see us review on this channel. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Moving Music Critique Forward.